Started. All right, so we're going to go over on this webinar about the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedure mainly, but some of the other programs available to you. A little bit about me. My name is Wendy Christensen. I'm a CPA. I've been in the accounting field for over 20 years, most of that in the tax arena. I prepare returns every day. I review them. I have phone consultations. I pretty much prepared all the returns that we're going to talk about today. So rest assured, I've been there, done that. Also at TFX, we have a number of preparers that have dealt with probably a situation very similar to any of yours that you might have. We've filed thousands of returns. We have tons of experience. Chances are we've encountered your situation before. So once you connect with us, we can look at what you have and what your situation is, and hopefully help you file with the IRS in a way that's good for you and for them. This is what we're going to go over during this webinar. We're going to talk about just generally what the requirements are for US tax residents and what the streamlined procedure is and who's eligible and what the program entails. And then at the end, like I said, we'll have a question and answer session as well for any just general questions you might have. So what are the general filing requirements? Usually, if you have any income, you need to file a tax return with the US. This is no matter what, it's regardless of where you live. Another requirement that you have, if you have any non-US accounts, this is bank accounts, investment, retirement, you may be required to call what's called an FBAR. This is purely an informational return, but the IRS wants to know all your non-US account information. And this is something that needs to be filed every year. So we will be going over more about that, but I just wanted to know what an FBAR is before I start using that term. And both of those need to be filed every year by the deadline. And if you live outside the US, your deadline for the tax return is June 15th. And for the FBAR, it's April 15th, but there's always an automatic extension to October. But you don't have to really worry about those. We will help you remember those. If you're signed up with us, we'll send you a lot of reminders about extension or filing due dates so that you don't have to worry about that. You need to file every year. Like I said, this is for businesses, trusts. It's good to set up with a firm that can take in your entire tax situation. That way, if your business has a fiscal year ending in September, you're going to have a different tax deadline than somebody who has a fiscal or has a calendar year ending for their corporation. So we will help you determine when your deadlines are so that you don't miss any and are subject to penalties. So now we'll go over what the streamlined procedures are. This is an amnesty program. It's a way to get into compliance with the IRS without penalties. It was introduced prior to streamlined procedures. There was a program to get in to be able to come into compliance, but there were automatic penalties. It was kind of like when your mom tells you to tell the truth and she won't punish you, but she always punishes you. And this is kind of what happened. So they came up with the streamlined procedure as a way for taxpayers who are not doing it on purpose, who are not willful, to come into compliance and to not be penalized. The most common program, you are only required to file 3 years of tax returns and 6 years of the FBAR. Even if you've never filed a return, say you're retired, you're 80 years old, you've never filed a return, that's okay. You still only need to file 3 years of a tax return. They understand. I mean, there's no way you could go back that far. So there's multiple types of programs under the streamlined procedure, and we'll go over each of these that are listed on the slides. The most common is the foreign offshore, but we do all of these pretty much on a daily basis at TFX. The common theme with all of these procedures is just the IRS gives clear guidelines on how to submit under these procedures. And you do what they ask, you promise you'll do better, you'll file on time. It's very procedural. You need to follow the exact, like any good bureaucracy, you need to follow exactly the way that they want you to file. And the biggest thing is to do this before the IRS comes to you. If the IRS reaches out to you, you may no longer be eligible for these procedures. So you definitely want to use them as a way to avoid any possible, you want to file under the procedures to avoid any possible penalties. You do not want the IRS to reach out first. There are so many different reasons to file under these procedures. So many, if you may have filed all your returns and think everything is good there, but you had no idea you were supposed to be filing FBARs. We can help. You maybe didn't realize, I have clients that have a foreign corporation but said, oh, I just opened it, I haven't done anything with it, I haven't even opened a bank account, so I've never reported that. Unfortunately, you still need to report that. So you may need to file under these procedures in order to now do that. Like I said, there's a number of examples here. There's way more than are even on here. Chances are, yeah, we've encountered your situation before. We just ask that you give us as much information as possible, and then we will look at it and help you to determine the best way to come into compliance with the IRS. So now we're going to do a poll on, let us know, have you filed your 2021 return? And then let us know if you are delinquent. This will help us to know kind of what situations generally a lot of you might be in. Yeah, we need some good game show music for you. Because I know sometimes you may have just realized that you were supposed to be filing. Maybe you've never even been to the United States. And luckily for you, you're a citizen that gets to file U.S. tax returns. It's a very common situation that we can help with. This poll will stay up for anybody who hasn't answered. And again, yeah, this video will be available to you after we're done. It's being recorded, so you will be able to watch it again, along with any of the questions that have been answered. All right, if everybody's answered that, we'll probably go ahead and continue with my exciting presentation. Okay, so now we'll go over the eligibility criteria. The most common procedure is the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedure. For this, you need to not have been in the US for probably more than a month in a year. As you can see, in one of the 3 years that we are going to file, you need at least one of those where you are outside of the US for 330 days. And one of the bigger eligibility requirements is also you have to show that you are non-willful. You did not know you were supposed to be filing. If you knew you were supposed to be filing and just didn't do it because you knew you would owe taxes, you may not be able to file under this procedure. You need to, my example I gave before of someone that was born abroad and had no idea, that's a perfect example of non-willfulness. Another example could be maybe you did live in the US and then you moved to Australia for work and filed all your returns in Australia and figure you're good. So once you find out that you have to file tax returns in the US, even if you're living and filing returns in Australia, you can still, that is a non-willful reason. So you can still file under these procedures. Contrary to popular belief, the IRS really doesn't want to penalize people. They just want people to be in compliance. This helps, these programs help people who are not aware of their requirements. They want those taxpayers to come into the fold, to come on and file their returns like they're supposed to, and they're trying to make it easy for you because they know it wasn't on purpose. So they're providing this as a way to help you become into compliance. Another one of the procedures is the delinquent information return procedures. This is for if you have a corporation, partnership, trust. These are forms that may or may not even affect your overall tax return, any kind of taxes due, but they still need to be filed. And the penalties for these are pretty large. They're usually start at about 10,000 for each form. So you definitely want to get caught up on these. And we will provide, we'll work with you to provide a reasonable cause for why they weren't filed. As you can see, there's lots of examples. Usually if you have a company that separates the liability from you as an individual, you likely have a filing requirement here. There's also trusts. I know if you have a discretionary trust, a bear trust. In Australia, if you have a self-managed super fund, that usually is considered a trust. So there's lots of, this is another example of things that we will help determine when you're with us, whether or not you have one of these items that needs to be filed. And the penalties are very large. They start at 10,000 and only go up from there. You definitely want to be filing these returns. And if possible, use one of these procedures to come into compliance to avoid these massive penalties. We talked about FBARs previously. These have no tax consequences. They're only providing the IRS with information on your non-US financial accounts. But if you don't file, again, starting at 10,000. So you definitely want to file these forms. And we can help, if this is all you need to do, we can help you file your returns under this delinquent FBAR submission procedures by doing it with the correct wording that they want on the FBAR. We can help with that. And if you've heard of FACTA before, it's very similar to the FBAR, but it's an additional form that's on your tax return that reports your non-US financial accounts. So a lot of times you'll be required, depending on the balances in your bank accounts, you might be required to file both the FBAR, which is filed separately than your return, and the FACTA. Both of those carry penalties. You want to file them. The last option, if you don't qualify under the foreign offshore procedures, maybe you've been in the US too long, maybe you come and visit every year for a couple months, maybe you live here. This is for people that have filed, but maybe didn't report that Switzerland rental that you have, any income that you didn't realize the US wants your worldwide income. They want everything, like a good government does. And so they want you to report everything. So if you did not do that and you have non-US items that weren't included, then this is a way where we can amend or correct your prior returns and submit under the domestic offshore procedure. This does carry a 5% penalty automatically, but for all the returns I prepared under this procedure, it's nothing compared to the penalties that could be assessed for the items that we're missing. So a lot of times it's worth it. But we will always look at that and help you determine if that's the best situation. We have you fill out a questionnaire in our website, and we will look at all the information you provide, and then we'll come to you and we'll go over your options, and then you ultimately get to decide how you want to proceed. Here's another poll we'll do. We want to see your reasons for not filing. I know that there's lots of reasons. That'd be great if you're up to date, but I can't imagine. Maybe you just wanted to attend a good webinar today. We'll let you all answer this, see where everybody is. All right, we will go ahead and go through what is required in these programs. If you haven't filed, then we will file the 3 most recent delinquent tax returns. Right now, if you live outside of the US, your deadline for filing is June 15th. So right now, your 18, 19, and 20 tax returns are past due. Those are the years you would file. And then you're also required to file 6 years of FBARs. As you can see, it's 15 through 20. Right now, you want to file an extension so that you can be on time for your 2021 return. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's not overdue yet. If you do live in the US and you did not file an extension, these years would shift for you because now 2021 is past due. Confusing, probably, but we can help you. Again, come to us, we'll let you know what years, you can give us your situation, we'll let you know what years you need to file under. As always, our main goal with all our clients is to file your tax returns accurately, but as detailed as possible, and without penalty. Nobody wants a penalty. So our goal is to always help you to avoid those penalties and to file your tax returns. We, as a firm, once you're our client, we help you meet all of those deadlines. So even if you forget, we're going to send you an email letting you know that, hey, it's time. And if you're not going to be filing, we need you to file an extension. So we can help with that. As I mentioned before, you can always amend. So if you filed your returns but didn't realize that you should have been including your dividends from maybe your German investment account, we can amend to include that. We'll look at what wasn't included and what program is best for you, again, to avoid those penalties. I know it's a lot, it seems confusing. The good news is you don't have to worry that much about it. All you have to do is to provide us with your information. We will help you determine what years need to be filed and what needs to be done, what procedure. You just need to provide the information. TFX has got you. Now, why would you come to us instead of doing this yourself? Well, like any government, they're very procedural. They want specific returns in a specific order, with a specific header, with a specific color. They have a specific outline for how this is supposed to be put together. And when we do these returns for you, we provide final instructions that detail exactly how to put everything together, what order to put it together, where to mail, exactly how to do it. If you fail to put this together, it may not be processed correctly, and then you may be subject to those penalties. You want to do it in the exact manner that they ask you to do it. We do these procedures, we do tax returns under these procedures on a daily basis. I probably have 5 clients I'm doing this for right now that I'm working on. This is very much in our wheelhouse. So we can help you figure out, we've done this, and so we know the way that it needs to be submitted. So the final part of the Streamlined program is your certification letter. We have just the front page of it right there, where it's not a tax form, but it's basically asking for, your name, the years, any tax due. But the second page is where we're going to have you provide your reason for non-filing. And this is where normally we'll ask you to provide a paragraph or two with your non-US financial background, letting us know where maybe your assets came from. And then we'll take that information and tailor your story to comply with IRS guidelines for a successful submission. You can prepare this yourself. We have a streamlined procedure package, and there's an additional fee for the certification letter. I've had one client in all my years at TFX that has prepared this themselves. Everybody else usually chooses to have us prepare this, which to me makes sense. Because if you're already doing this and wanting to make sure you're doing everything right, you want to make sure the professionals that have done this a number of times before are helping you with that affidavit to make sure that it will be accepted under these procedures. We work with you to make sure that your narrative provides your correct situation and the details that you want to include. The upcoming deadline is June 15th for those of you that live outside the US. So now you want to file an extension. That's goal number one. You want to create an account and file that extension, because with the streamlined procedures, you're now promising you're going to be good and file on time. So we need to make sure that you file that extension, because now once you file that extension, you have until October to file your 2021 tax return. That will give us time to prepare those 3 years of 18 through 20 tax returns. And even hopefully right now, give the IRS time to process it. We want to give them as much time to process that before we file your 2021 tax return. And you'll want to go in and just start, as soon as you file that extension, you'll want to start filling out our questionnaire. We try to make our questionnaire as easy as possible, but also as detailed as possible. I can't tell you the number of clients I've had that have been new to us, filed FBARs every year, filed tax returns every year, but once they fill out our questionnaire, all of a sudden they realize that they should have been reporting their mutual funds that are in their Singapore bank account, investment account. So it's trying to catch anything that might need reporting that even you didn't realize might need reporting. And it might be difficult. It's very detailed. So the first year might take a little longer. You can probably, grab your wine at night and just get going and start filling it out. But as soon as you fill out that first questionnaire, the next years are just going to fly by, because you can copy that questionnaire to the next year and only change the information that has changed. So if for all 3 of the years that you're filling out, if you worked at the same job and maybe only had raises during that time, if everything else is the same, it's going to be very simple for you. All you have to do is copy it over and then just go in and change what your wage was for that year. We try to make it not too painful, even though I know taxes are not everybody's what you want to do for pleasure. So we help everyone. Obviously, we want to help you whether you live in the US, live outside. We're web-based, so we provide chat support, phone support. You can email your preparer back and forth with the different time zones that we're all working in, especially in this global society that we live in. I feel like it's more important than ever to engage a firm like TFX, purely because we understand what reporting requirements for international assets, and we're able to help you with all of that. And we have great service. We absolutely try to respond as soon as possible to any questions. And even in the questionnaire, there's a space for you to put any notes on anything that you feel like you might want more clarification on from your preparer once you're assigned, or if you feel like there's still something that you need to say. We try to make communication as easy as possible. We want our clients to be happy with our services, and we want to spend our advertising dollars on you instead of, you know, Google. So we provide a $25 credit to you and a friend if you refer a friend. I had a blogger recently that I did, and he said he was going to refer enough people so that he wouldn't have to pay for his tax return next year. So you can do this as much as you want, but we want you to be so happy with us that you can that you'll get that $25 credit, and you guys can go out and grab a drink with that money. So hopefully that answered some of your questions. Again, this video will be available for you later, as will the transcript. I'll look on here and I'll see if there's some questions that we can answer live. I see that there's just one about mutual funds in India. Usually these do need to be reported. Good question on where the video will be available. Before I answer that though, for these mutual funds, there are usually any mutual fund that is held in a non-US market, we need to report that on your tax return. Yeah, so let's look. Yes, there's a question about state returns. Yes, depending on, this is another subject that is very tricky that not a lot of local tax preparers maybe fully understand. If you may need to file a state tax return, depending on if maybe you come to the US for your German employer and work here for 2 weeks. Depending on your income and the requirements of that state, you may need to file a state tax return for that year. We will look at that and we will see what if you do have a state filing requirement. And I see there's another question that might be being answered. As long as you have income and as long as you have non-US accounts, you need to file. I recommend people that aren't sure if they have a filing requirement, if they didn't make that much money, I always recommend you fill out a questionnaire, because you may be surprised that there is something that requires you to file. One good example is if you're married to a non-resident alien, a non-US person, if you're married to them, if you make at least $5 in any kind of income, so if you have $5 of interest income, you have a filing requirement. So you definitely may have a filing requirement even if you feel like you didn't make any money. There is another question about retirement contributions. This again depends. We will be able to answer this question for you, depending on what country these contributions are to. Some require that we include these in your wage income, and some there's treaties that make it so that we don't have to. We will be able to help you with that. We'll have you enter in the questionnaire, and then we will let you know if it's required to be included. Is it free to do the questionnaire? It is free. You can always fill out the questionnaire. And like I said, that's the best option. You can fill it out. You'll be assigned a preparer. That preparer will review your information. And I just saw somebody the other day that entered it in and there was no filing requirement. So we let them know that they had no need to file that year. That way you can feel secure in knowing that you did not have a filing requirement. Let's see. This question said, you mentioned you'll help with filing for 3 years, but if I've not filed for a period of time longer than 3 years, do I still need to file for those earlier years? Most likely not. If you're filing under the streamlined procedure, you are only required to file, if your package is accepted, we file those 3 years of tax returns. And once it's submitted to the IRS and processed and accepted, you don't need to worry about the earlier years. That's what's so great about these programs. I can't imagine trying to prepare a return for income that you had 10 years ago. Unless you're a very good record keeper, most of us don't have all of the documents that would even, it's hard enough to come up with the 6 years of bank balance information for the FBARs. So, and then Jamie was asking, what age do you have to start paying taxes? As soon as you have money, as soon as you start making income. This is another, when I have clients that come to me that are starting to have kids that might be making money. And honestly, even if your child doesn't have a job, if you have an investment account set up for them, depending on how much money that investment income generates, then they may have a filing requirement. It's always good in your questionnaire for you. I would add maybe at the bottom in the notes, just, hey, I have a 5-year-old who made 10,000 this year in the stock market. Does he need to file? Something like that. Let us know, give us a heads up that might be something, but it's always worth giving us more information than you feel like we need. And that way we can fully help to make sure you're filing everything that's needed. Another question is, don't you have to file FBARs even if you don't have to file an income tax return? Absolutely. Those are separate from the tax return. So even if you have absolutely no income, you don't need to file a tax return. If you meet the thresholds for the FBAR, you need to file that every year. So we have our last poll over here. We want to know how you thought about this webinar. If you felt like it was informative, you felt like we needed a little more information. We also want to know in the comments, if you can add to the chat, if there's any topics that you feel like you want us to cover. Sure, this is about the streamlined, but maybe you want to know more about FBARs. Everybody wants to know more about FBARs. Anything that you feel, maybe more about trusts and the filing requirements for that. Anything that you feel like you would like to know more, and we can maybe prepare a webinar for that. Let us know. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, this video will be available. The question and answer will be available. Definitely, if you have not filed an extension yet, file an extension and get started on those questionnaires. So I hope this was useful to you. Reach out to us if you have any additional questions, and we'll be more than happy to help.